Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dancing with Damage. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And today, it's story time.
My favorite time.
Story time is serious time. And it's not really story time because I don't think we'll be telling a lot of stories. We're actually going to be talking about stories. In the last episode, we chatted about seasonal restocking. And that was something Abby had seen on social media, something that she had been thinking about, and she wanted to share her thoughts with us. And that was great. And so we thought for this episode, we'd do something that I like to think about. I don't have as many thoughts as Abby. I'm not as multi-thoughted.
Multi-thoughted.
Yeah, new word, copyright. I don't think anyone will be in danger of breaching that copyright. But it's just an interesting thing, Abby, and I just want to flesh it out with you and see if we can find anything. One thing I really like comparing people and ideas to is sometimes, you know, those people who pan for gold and they'll go into a river and they'll pick up their pan full of silt and like rocks and whatever. And you're like, you have silt. That is no good. You have failed. But then they shake it and they shake it and it like sieves through. And maybe they're left with some little nuggets of gold at the bottom of all that sludge. And the sludge washes away and they're left with those little specks of gold. And so I'm hoping that the idea we're about to talk about today can be like that. And we can pan through it. And with Abby's help and with your help, you can always leave comments about your thoughts too. We love that. We can maybe find some gold. And what I want to talk about, Abby, is stories and how humans are so enraptured by a good story. So let me start with this. What would you classify as a story? How do you think the average person would define what a story is?
To take a step back to 9th grade English class, it normally has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Normally a good story, because little kids sometimes tell stories that don't really have a premise and they don't really go anywhere. So I think what I would quantify as a story is you start off with a protagonist or some kind of protagonists, one or many people who have a goal.
Okay.
And there is a hurdle blocking their way of some kind. And then as the story progresses, you learn more about the protagonist and other characters. Often there's some kind of growth or an increase in skill of some kind. The climax is usually a dramatic twist of some kind or some kind of a perceived failure or an extra hurdle or finally coming to a grand moment that was previously promised. And then usually as the book concludes, it wraps up some ends and a goal has either been accomplished or a lesson has been learned or progress in a significant way has been made.
Huh. I really like that definition. And the reason I like it is because while she was talking, I was thinking, well, what about like a tragedy where there are protagonists and there's a plot and there's whatever, but it ends sort of tragically. But the way she described it, the twist could be a positive twist or a negative twist. I really like that. So for example, Abby, a documentary on bees. Is that a story when we learn about where the bee lives, what it does with its time, and buzz, etc.?
It absolutely could be, because bees are pivotal for the environment, and the climax or one of the twists could be facts about the declining bee population. It could reference Einstein saying that humanity is dead once the bees are gone. It could talk about how many different plants and vegetables and fruits rely on bees. It could talk about the benefits of honey and the fact that they found, I think it was 1,000-year-old honey, and it was considered safe to eat. I don't know what scientists drew the short stick to taste it, just to see if anything would happen. But I think it's interesting. Maybe they didn't taste it. Maybe they just put it under a microscope or something.
Or maybe when you're excavating in ancient Mesopotamia, or wherever they were that they found the honey, you know, and maybe it's a hot day and you didn't pack a lunch and you have some ancient honey and some bread. And that is just the bee's knees.
Well, maybe the story could end with it. That's very funny. With the bees, where maybe it gives a fact about how many bees are actually in the wild today, which would be probably a shocking number, or it could end on a message of hope with maybe some innovations or some movements currently existing to try to help turn things around for the honeybee. And I think if you structure it where you sort of learn something at the end, there's an impact. There has to be a why. You have to have a why to the story. Are we questing for something? Are we trying to fulfill a personal goal? Are we trying to escape from something? Are we trying to understand a mystery? Are we trying just to survive a trial or tribulation? There has to be a motivation. And usually the conclusion of the story, to make it a story, there's a resolution of some kind. It doesn't have to be positive. It doesn't have to be negative. It just has to be in some way final.
And again, the purpose of this episode is to talk about stories and sort of why it is that whenever someone starts a story or you hear the first sentence of a story, for example, around a campfire or wherever, it always seems to draw us in. Have you noticed that too, Abby?
Absolutely, I have.
It's very common. You know, you go to work, you're talking with your colleagues, if they're able to tell a story, especially if it's funny or dramatic or embarrassing, we love these things. And it's just sort of a staple in our lives. But why is it so universally appealing? Anything that has a universal presentation in humans, I always think is fascinating because it tells us that, you know, it's something that's at our core. Last episode, we talked about the purpose of human life being something that was deep within us, given to us by evolution, and how if you were to dissect an animal, the further you go into the animal, the more similarities you have between creatures. So of course, if you go into a creature, you'll find their heart in their lungs. And if it's a lizard, or if it's a cow, or if it's a dragon, I caught you there. You didn't think I'd say dragon.
We like dragons.
We like dragons. But let's assume if dragons were autopsied, hypothetically, they might have a similar innards. But on the outside, a dragon might look very different. I mean, there's Komodo dragons.
That's true. They're very, is it venomous or poisonous?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to suggest that they are neither. So this is fun. So we have a venomous creature that can inject venom through its fangs, through venom glands. As such, specific. Did you notice? Do I have to?
I think that was
You were
good.
able to capture. Okay, that's number one. Number two, a poisonous thing like a poison dart frog. Secretions of poisonous essence through its skin, so if it's eaten, that's how it gets the poison into its prey, not through injection, but through consumption. But the Komodo dragon, it's interesting because,
It's saliva.
well, apparently the inside of the Komodo dragon's mouth gets so fetid, so they'll eat raw meat, but the bacteria from that decomposing meat is so active in their mouths that if you're bitten by a Komodo dragon, apparently there's so much bacterial infection that it's like venom because it causes a sepsis. And so apparently what Komodo dragons will do will sort of go out and bite a buffalo, for example, something they couldn't kill just by themselves, and then follow it around for a few days. The buffalo will eventually perish from that infection, which is a little cruel, but nature is cruel.
So they're toxic?
I actually don't know what they are. I guess that would be, yeah, maybe they're just unhygienic. Maybe some Colgate would help. Maybe they'll clear up that situation. Some Listerine, my friend. Not that expensive. Doesn't taste great, I warrant. But I guess I would have to go with venomous. I don't
Okay.
think they have venom glands, though.
That has nothing to do with the story. Although you did sort of tell us a story by going through the premise of we want to know how to quantify a Komodo dragon. You were led through facts. I would say we had a twist where it was neither venomous nor poisonous by your definition.
Yikes.
And then I learned something new, that how it is considered to be, I'm going to say toxic,
I like what she says.
because I knew its saliva was dangerous. I didn't understand the mechanics of it. So that's interesting. But that was a story. I like that. It fit the arc of the story.
Anyway, we're panning here. And I really don't know where it's going. But anything that's universal, as I say, is always worth investigating. So what's a story that you really like, Abby?
The Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. Okay. Who's the protagonist?
Julie Andrews, but Maria.
The character of Julie Andrews is portraying is Maria. And how was her personality at the beginning?
She's very optimistic, a little rebellious, hopeful.
And how is her life circumstances?
Unfortunate. She's an orphan and she's trying her best to fit in anywhere, but there's a lot of adversity within herself. And also, unfortunately, the church, which she's trying to make her own home, it requires a level of conformity she's just not able to give them.
And is she happy at the monastery?
I think she's as happy as she can be, but not truly happy.
Okay. So, in the first act of the film, The Sound of Music, if you haven't seen it,
Very good.
very good, definitely worth a watch. I think it was rated the movie that if the world was going to end, it would be like put in a time capsule as an example of filmography.
I worked at a movie theater when I was younger, and in one of the pre-shows that they showed, they said that The Sound of Music was so good, if the world is ever going to end, there was an agreement internationally that they will play The Sound of Music on every broadcast channel to try to make people feel okay in their last moments, which is kind of crazy.
That's kind of crazy. So it's not a time capsule. It was apparently a broadcast. But there you go. What an interesting thing about that movie. Great movie. So what happens in the first, give us sort of a recap of, by the end of the first act, before the intermission, how is Maria compared to how she was at the very beginning of the film?
She's changed. She has deeper connection. She has become a nanny for 7 children. Captain Von Trapp's children. He is ex-military. He is an Austrian. The government is actively attempting to recruit him to fight for Hitler's Germany, which he is against for many reasons.
Okay.
So there's a lot of contention there. And Captain Von Trapp is also courting a woman who isn't a bad person, but just isn't right for him, in attempts to fill the role of mother for his children, because he feels abstractly that that role should be fulfilled, but didn't actually understand what that role meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of the movie, she is at the monastery. She is late for something. She's always singing and getting in trouble, being defiant. Once she is in the middle of the movie, has that aspect of her changed?
No, but those aspects of her personality are now more beneficial than they were. They fit better into the circumstances of the Von Trapp's home than they did in the monastery.
Okay. So they're not causing her so many issues.
Yeah.
And she's not alone. She has a partner and they love each other.
I think by the end of the first act, she and Captain Von Trapp admit their love for each other, yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the second act. What is the situation at the beginning of the second act?
They return from their honeymoon,
Okay.
I believe, and it is more so focused on the war. And essentially, Captain Von Trapp is trying to escape with his family to Switzerland to avoid conscription. And the military is heavily attempting to force him to be conscripted. So they pretend to be participating in a music festival, which his friend, it's sort of unclear, they call him Uncle Max, but it's unclear if they're actually related or just friends, is trying to force the children into participating in an attempt to win a prize, which is money. Uncle Max likes money. So they use that as a cover to attempt to sneak out into the night and escape to Switzerland for their freedom.
Okay. So let's just put a pin in that. Let's take Julie Andrews. No, we don't want to put a pin in Julie Andrews.
She's perfect.
She's perfect. A pin probably wouldn't hurt her. So we will talk about Harry Potter.
Okay.
That is a book series we often talk about. And so, Abby, at the beginning of Harry Potter, what is the protagonist, I'm trying to pick examples that have made it into the zeitgeist, not necessarily for any other reason, and just because the stories are popular and I hope people can at least know generally what the plot is. But tell me a bit about how Harry Potter is at the beginning of the series.
He's very sad. He's impoverished. He's not given clothes that fit him. He's not given the best food. He is a third-class citizen in his own home because his parents died when he was a baby. So he was given to his only living relatives, or his closest living relatives, I should say. And they're the Dursleys, and they treat him very poorly. And then he, on the eve of his 11th birthday, he very sadly is trying to make himself feel better, and he receives a letter informing him that he has magical powers.
Okay.
And that he is allowed to leave this horrible life and have any kind of new life.
Okay. And at the end, what is he up to the last couple books?
Well, he is overthrowing one of the greatest evils known to wizard kind. He has increased in his skill and power. Unlike the beginning of the book series, he has many meaningful, close relationships.
Okay.
And he has accomplished a lot of things. And he has had a lot of personal, emotional, and magical growth.
Okay. And let's do one more. Lord of the Rings. How familiar? I actually don't know how familiar Abigail is. Abigail. That says Ian. So that's not helpful. It used to say Abigail. That's photoshopped. No, it's just a reversible stool, not photoshopped. We don't have that technology.
So, Frodo.
Okay. Frodo, how is he at the beginning of that series?
So he's hanging out. He's in his little hobbit hole, and he has instincts to want to leave and go explore. But I can't remember if I'm thinking of The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Well, why don't I step in here? I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan.
Yeah.
Certainly of the movies, and I have read the books a long time ago. I actually remember reading them with my mom, and it was so funny. I remember my mom would come home from work, and she would read Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Now, if you've ever seen this book, it is like 1,000 pages long, and the text is super dense, and they didn't believe in line spacing. Heck no, not in the version we got.
No, he wrote it for his kids. It was their bedtime stories.
Yes. But I think it was also his bedtime story, because whenever my mom would read it to me, I remember her falling asleep, and then we would just like put a bookmark where she fell asleep and carry on the next night. It was so funny. It took us years to get through that. So in Lord of the Rings, we have Frodo. Frodo has the ring, gets the ring, the One Ring, and he's pursued by the Nazgul across the Shire, eventually forms the Fellowship, the famous Fellowship that people know about, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, that quirky little dwarf, and he forms those relationships. And then off they go. And he tries his level best to destroy the ring with the help of his friends and the things he's learned along the way and some items he's gathered along the way. And so when I put those three plots and overlay them over each other, let me ask you this, Abby. At the beginning of those three books, who is being persecuted?
The protagonist.
And by what, generally?
Life and circumstance.
And at the very beginning, are they succumbing to their circumstance, or have they defeated their circumstance?
They're succumbing.
Okay. Then, you say, at some point, would you agree with me that some new relationship is formed along the way?
Yes.
I forget what the second one. Oh, Harry Potter. Yeah, okay. A relationship is formed. And then, Abby, would you agree with me that suddenly those who were persecuted at the beginning by their circumstances are trying to help someone else who is being persecuted and trying to free others?
Yes.
So what we have here, and why I think, and I have concluded just now, why these classic stories stir so much emotion in us is because it's a little bit like the Social Blueprint. We talk about the rat in the corner. And the rat at the beginning is fleeing from the danger, being persecuted. And it would have worked a little better in the Social Blueprint if the rat had been fleeing with a friend, two rats. Like Abby and I, we could be rats, potentially. We have snouts. We like cheese, as I assume rats do. So we're fleeing from some issues, and that also reminds us of childhood, the childhood of our lives, where our biggest problems are sort of our immediate surroundings, and we feel like circumstances are unfair, and we're having damage injected into us, and we're not really in control of things. But then, in our teenage and later years, we form
Relationships.
We form the relationships generally at that age that are going to either be permanent, for example, in marriage, well, hopefully permanent, or lifelong friends. I mean, Abby, would you agree that not a lot of our do you hang out still with a lot of your elementary school friends?
Ironically, I do.
Oh, dear.
But like 30% of my 3 friends are elementary school friends. But that's Only because I have 3 whole friends.
Okay, so some relationships can even be from elementary school. But what about from your daycare? Did you go to daycare?
I probably did. I don't think so.
Probably not.
No, earliest was grade 2.
Okay. And so you formed some relationships. And at some point, did you feel like you were in a bit more control of your life?
Yes.
Okay. And now, what are your goals in life? Are you trying to stabilize yourself, or are you trying to do something for the community, or what are you trying to do?
Well, my goal and Ian's goal, and the reason we keep talking to you, is because humanity is suffering, and we have a solution that we think could work to solve that problem. So our goal, like many adults, is to try to make the world a better place, to improve upon society and to liberate others.
And so that's a little bit like the rats. It's also a little bit like what damage is. Damage is something that we can struggle under, a burden we can struggle under because it is a powerful force. Initially, we can be helpless against it because it is so overwhelming and so mysterious, causing people to do self-destructive things. But then the next phase, we learn about it. We maybe form relationships with people who want to talk about it. And suddenly we're on even footing with damage. And then finally, we want to help others reduce their damage. And even if you don't realize this common theme is relating to damage, I think we can all agree that there's an instinct at a certain point in development that you want to help people not be so miserable or to help them with their problems. We often see it construed as, well, I want to stop people in the community from being hungry. I want to stop them from being homeless. I want to stop racism. I want to stop these things. And again, if you understand the theory of damage, what you're really trying to do is to reduce damage in others.
Or show love.
Or show love. And so I think, and again, once more, if we look at our rats who are fleeing from the cats of damage, it's like the first stage of life is running. At one point, we reach that moment of choice, fight or flight, or freeze. And just like those protagonists, we want to see a fight. We want to see a battle against those big forces. And in all three, you can see the villains become different. In Sound of Music, at first, the villain is, no one takes her seriously, and she's kind of not treated seriously, and people call her silly. So her villain is like
Herself. Well, they literally have a song called How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? They're classifying her as a problem. That's a little mean. They're nuns. That's savage.
That's very savage. And then Harry Potter, he's trying to fit in with a magical world. He doesn't know much about it. He's trying to survive in that culture. And plus, he's a celebrity, but he doesn't know it. And
even before that, I mean, he was trying to just survive in the human world, and he was literally being neglected by his only relatives that he sort of knew of.
And in Lord of the Rings, Frodo is being pursued by the Nazgul, and he's confused, doesn't understand why he has the ring and all these things. So the first stage of life is shouldering your own burden, getting comfortable with your own knapsack that's on your back, and being able to struggle forward with that. And then the next phase in life is through friendship and relationships, leaning on them and relying on them. And then in the last stage of those stories, we see a greater foe. Not a personal persecution, but a larger one. We have Maria versus the Nazis. Quite a showdown, if you ask me. The nun versus the Reich. Fight? Spoilers, the nun wins. Frodo is now contending against the nation of Sauron and his evil armies. And Harry Potter is now contending against He Who Shall Not Be Named and his evil forces.
I would like to challenge you in the comments. Think about your favorite book series, your favorite TV show, your favorite movies, and see if it fits in to what we think might be the universal plot line of stories that compel people. Obviously, stories can take different forms, but the ones that really capture our imagination and our hearts. Funny enough, I was thinking about popular book series and A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, the Knight's Court series. You have not read it, but it's right now very, very popular on social media to talk about because years ago, the author had sort of finished writing the stories, and now she has just announced the next 2 installments in the series for later this year and early next year. So it's a big deal. Out of nowhere, there's 2 more books. We're finally getting more of the story. And Feyre, who is the main character, literally also is impoverished. Her family don't understand her. They don't appreciate her. She's whisked off to a magical world. All of a sudden, she gains a lot of accolades and a lot of power. She makes good connections. And then she turns into a champion for other people. And I was thinking that a lot of very famous stories are sort of the underdog to a savior type of story. Think of Mulan. She is a woman who doesn't fit in with the role of a woman in China, and she literally saves China, basically single-handedly. And in The Lion King, you know, Simba goes from thinking he killed his own father and suffering with serious PTSD and depression to making friends with Timon and Pumbaa, to rising up and saving the entire lion pride from his Uncle Scar and the hyenas.
Yikes.
You think of Hercules, he was persecuted for being too strong, didn't understand why he never fit in. Turns out he was adopted. He goes through a lot of personal sacrifice and training, and then he saves basically all of Greece from a bunch of monsters to the point where he is offered a godhood, a godship.
Yes, I believe that is the correct promotion.
And he even turns it down because his relationship with Meg, his love, is so great, nothing could ever be more than it. So I feel like, and I challenge you in the comments, share your examples that you are like, oh my gosh, this fits, where it's an underdog and they form valuable relationships, and that spurs them to being someone who tries to help others and valuing those relationships above all else. I think that's beautiful.
It is. So that seems to be the common story, and it is the story of damage, as we talked about. But also one more thing. You are called the definition of child in our glossary. Child, social blueprint. One who draws on society and for whom sacrifices are made. The child does not act to improve conditions for the next generation and is not expected to produce loving sacrifice. So that is how we are born. Up to a certain age, we're not expected to be going out and helping other people, just like the infancy of the protagonist that Abby and I have been talking to. But then, I'm looking for adult. Starts with A.
It's a glossary.
I kept flipping forward after child. Ooh.
Needs more coffee.
Yeah, adult, one who contributes to society through self-sacrifice. The adult acts on the instinct to improve conditions for the next generation. Now, does that remind us of the protagonist in the latter part of the shows we've been talking about?
Absolutely. It's essentially, through our perspective, you start life as a child who someone is sacrificed for. You feel a need, a drive to be more than you are, to find some meaning in life. You, through loving relationships, find a way to adulthood, and then using those loving relationships to prop up the fourth leg of your table and to make you stable and sturdy and able to be a champion, will then use your love to try to fight damage in others and to try to improve society. It's exactly the same story.
That's right. So as long as these stories stay relevant and stay topical, it gives me hope and Abby hope, because we know that if that is the song of the human spirit, then we're right about how there's a story in there, the bear and the seasons, how there has to be, there can be a winter, but then there has to be a spring. There has to be a time of childhood followed by a time of adulthood. That's how it's supposed to be. And all these stories are just saying that over and over again. And the fact that we're so drawn to them tells me that the purpose of life to sacrifice for the next generation as an adult, specifically, which we talk about in the book and we defend in the book, it must have some truth to it. And more than that, it is not a lost hope that when we suggest to you that humans are capable of making sacrifices as we have described in the book, we know it's still possible, because otherwise those stories wouldn't be as popular as they are. It would defy reason that when we're relating to a protagonist and being invested in a story, if it's a story that would be foreign or abhorrent to us. Rather, it must be a story that we see in the mirror and that we want to achieve on a subconscious, instinctive level. Would you agree?
It's another mirror to reflect life's purpose back at us. We all know it deep inside. We know what we're supposed to be doing. We're attracted in some way to the things that are good for us. We know on an instinctive level what we should be doing. So I think this is just further evidence to ask you to please consider the theory of damage and consider that maybe we're onto something. And if you hear us out, let us know what you have to say. Let us know what you think.
There you go. So the painting is complete. I don't know if we gotten anywhere with that, but that was fun. I enjoyed hashing that out with you, Abby. I think I do now see a lot of parallels between The Sound of Music and The Social Blueprint. And that's a nice thing because The Sound of Music is so lovely and the music is so lovely and everyone is so lovely, except for those naughty children who are always...
I thought you were going to say the Nazis. And I was like, yeah, they suck.
Yeah. Hey, I take it back, except for those tricksy Nazis. Okay, well, Abby, that was fun. So anything else we should add about, what was this? Stories.
No, we basically see the beat of the human drum is a story. There's a tale. There's a projection of the best stories, the ones that resonate with our souls, is what we think is in line with life's purpose. So hope you consider it. Leave your favorite stories down in the comments. Let us know if they fall in line with that trajectory. And we hope you have a super awesome, great day.